All right, let's jump right in. As developers, we're all trained to think a certain way, right? A user finds an exploit, it's a bug. Simple, we patch it, we lock it down, and we move on to the next ticket. But what if some of those so-called bugs, those clever little shortcuts your users are finding, are actually pointing you toward a much better user experience? In this explainer, we're going to flip that core assumption on its head and explore how intentionally designing cheats can become your new secret weapon. So here's the game plan. We'll kick things off with that classic developer dilemma, bug or feature. Then we're going to redefine what cheating even means in the world of UX. We'll dig into the psychology of why your users are looking for shortcuts in the first place, lay out a really practical framework for designing them safely, and then show you how this whole mindset shift can become your new design superpower. Okay, so picture this. You're digging through user logs, maybe watching some session recordings, and you spot something weird. A user has found a way to skip a step or bypass a process you spent weeks, maybe months building. Your first instinct is probably to write a ticket, right? And that brings us to the big question. Is that clever little workaround a P1 bug that needs to be fixed immediately, or is it actually a design win in disguise? Is that user showing you a desire path that you never saw? Are they basically telling you that your official way, your perfectly crafted user flow, is just too complicated, too frustrating, or too slow? This is the dilemma we're going to unpack. So let's just get this out of the way. We need to completely reframe the concept of cheating. I know, the word itself probably makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. We spend our entire careers preventing it. But in the context of user experience, it can be something totally different, something really, really powerful. Now, look closely at this definition. The key phrase here, the most important part, is intentionally designed. Let's be super clear. We are not talking about security flaws. We're not talking about SQL injection or letting someone access data they shouldn't. This is about a deliberate, thoughtful strategy to build in smart shortcuts that help a user when they're stuck or just plain frustrated. It's about seeing where they're going to struggle and giving them a clever way out. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got every developer's worst nightmare, a harmful exploit. It's unintended, it breaks your system, it causes total chaos. But on the right, you have something else entirely, a designed cheat. This is intentional, it's controlled, and its only purpose is to make the user's life easier, not to break your app. You have to think of it as a user-centric feature, not a system failure. Okay, so you might be thinking, why on earth would we do this? Why build shortcuts into a system we want people to use properly? Well, it all boils down to some pretty basic human psychology around progress and motivation, because sometimes the proper way just isn't working for them. So what does the user get out of this? Well, it really boils down to three big benefits. First, it helps them get past frustrating limitations. When they hit a wall, like a form they just can't figure out, a little loophole can get them unstuck, instead of just closing the tab and leaving forever. Second, it's a huge motivation boost. When a user feels overwhelmed, finding a shortcut gives them that little win, that little hit of dopamine that makes them want to keep going. And finally, it can actually make a boring task more fun. It turns a rigid, by-the-books process into something a little more playful and forgiving. All right, this all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually do this without, setting our app on fire? The good news is there's a really clear, structured way to do this responsibly. So let's get into the how. It really just comes down to 4 key rules for bending your own rules. First, you've got to find the right balance. Second, access has to be limited. This can't just become the new default for everyone. Third, if it's an intentional feature, you should probably communicate that in some way. And last, but definitely not least, you have to monitor it. You need analytics to see if it's working the way you thought it would. Let's talk about balance, because this is the big one. This is absolutely the key to making this whole thing work. The goal is not to make your app trivial or give away rewards for free. You're just trying to provide a little boost, a nudge for a user who really needs it. Think of it as an assist, not a free pass straight to the finish line. And this table really shows you the tightrope you're walking. It's kind of like a Goldilocks problem. If you make the cheat too easy, it just devalues the whole experience. Why even try? If you don't offer any help when things get too hard, your user gets frustrated and they just quit. But if you get that balance just right, the shortcut feels earned, it feels rewarding, and it actually motivates them to keep going. That's the sweet spot we're aiming for. When you really start to embrace this idea, your role as a developer starts to feel a little different. You're no longer just a gatekeeper, a security guard for your system's rules. You start to become more of a guide, thoughtfully creating a journey that's more flexible and, frankly, more human.
And that's really the ultimate takeaway here. This is not about encouraging people to break your stuff. It's about designing a smarter system that understands that humans will always look for the path of least resistance. It's about building something that can bend a little so that it doesn't break.
So, I'll leave you with a challenge. Take a hard look at your own app or your own website. What's one of those unbreakable rules you have? Maybe it's that super strict password policy that everyone complains about, or that rigid multi-step checkout flow that has a high abandonment rate. What's one rule that you could maybe bend just a little to create a way better experience for your users?